Hey students, Dr. Franklin here back with another tutorial, and this particular one will focus on how you calculate a multiple regression. And before we even get started, I'm going to go to variable view because again, variable view is the place that lists out all of the variables that are being used within this particular research project. If you go to the name column and you go down, you will see the different variables that are being used as well as the items that make up scaled scores within this research project. So we see that we have fear of missing out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the researchers likely rolled out a survey to participants. They completed the survey based on some Likert scale responses. We know that they're Likert scale responses because if we come over to values and we click on values, we see that we got some Likert responses here. So students likely had to indicate the degree to which they felt that they were missing out and having associated fear with that. And then as a result of filling out those items, the researchers moved forward and calculated a fear of missing out total score, which can be found right here, okay? Uh, this name column lists out all of the different variables, variable items that make up scaled scores or total scores, average scores within this particular study. And for us, excuse me, we are going to focus on, for the sake of this tutorial, we'll focus on perceived online racism. Perceived online racism will be our dependent variable. And I'm just scrolling down, and here you can see PORS items listed there. Um, and then towards the end, we should see a PORS total score. So that's PORS total, which gives us total, excuse me, a total indication of how much perceived online racism individuals experience. Now, what we're going to do is look at how personality correlates are related to individuals' perception of online racism. So we can't say that extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, openness causes people to perceive online racism, but we can explore the extent to which these variables increase the likelihood or are related to individuals experiencing perceived online racism. So that's what we're going to do with this particular tutorial. And your homework assignment will involve you taking the personality correlates and seeing how it is connected to the fear of missing out total scale. And that is up a little bit higher, 172 row. There we go. So with that being said, let's go back to data view so that we can calculate a multiple regression. Now, calculate it. I'll explain a bit about how you go about interpreting it because what's the use of calculating a statistic if you don't understand what it means and what you're doing? And then from there, we'll wrap things up. So the first thing that you want to do is go to analyze. Okay. You come down to regression, and then we are going to calculate a linear regression. So we're calculating a linear regression. We're looking at how the independent predictors, these independent variables, are correlated with again perceived online racism, and the regression is based on equations that deal with the formation of a line. So these different numerics are plugged into a line-based equation, and that allows us to make some significant determinations about relationships. Now, what we're going to do is first scroll down. It doesn't have to necessarily be in this order, but this is how we will start. Um, we're going to take perceived online racism total scale and put that in the dependent variable section. And then we need to put all of our personality correlates. Okay, and you can just hold down control and select each one and move them into the independent variable section. Okay, so we have our independent predictors that are listed there. We have our criterion variable or our dependent variable that is listed there. There's a few other things that we can do if we were doing like a stepwise, excuse me, a stepwise or hierarchical regression. We could check off R squared change. We're just going to simply select descriptives here to give us some descriptive stats as it relates to our study variables. We could do part and partial correlations and collinearity diagnostics. These are getting at collinearity diagnostics are getting at assumptions that you want to check for prior to running this type of analysis. Collinearity diagnostics deals with assessing the degree to which your independent variables are highly correlated with each other. The idea is that you don't want them to be highly correlated with each other, but you want them to have rather low to no correlation so that you can really focus on what you're interested in within the regression model. We're not going to check that for right now, but that's just a little bit of information about what that is getting at. Okay. That's all we need there. So we'll click continue. If we wanted, we could form some standardized residual plots, but we're not going to do that for the sake of this foundational tutorial. Um, there are some options there in regard to selecting certain cases, but we don't necessarily need that. So essentially all we have is just moving our proper dependent variable over as well as our independent variables over. Now, the only difference that will be here when you complete your assignment is you moving over the FOMO total, okay, instead of Port's total. Okay, we click OK, and it runs our statistic. So we have mean scores that are listed there. We have standard deviation scores that are listed, and that provides us useful information to describe what is happening within our sample. It looks like individuals are more on the agreeable side as it relates to this sample. Individuals also have some conscientious behavior that is typical of their personality. So that's something to take into consideration. Ultimately, what these scores mean will largely depend upon what the total scores mean and the Likert response items mean as it relates to assessing the items that make up the scale. We have some correlations that are listed here. We talked about correlations in the previous tutorial. We're going to move along and focus on excuse me, focus on the model summary, the ANOVA, and the unstandardized coefficients in the coefficients table. Okay, let's start with the model summary. What does all of this mean? The particular thing you want to be looking at is the adjusted R square. That's what you really want to be looking at. The R square is a coefficient of determination. It tells you the proportion of the variance in the dependent variable that can be explained by variation in the independent variable. Some individuals go with the R square, but if you go with the adjusted R square, it takes into consideration just the different variations within your score, sometimes unique differences associated with your sample. So I like to go with the adjusted R square. You can think of the standard error of the estimate as the score that gives you a margin of error for the prediction of an equation. Remember, the multiple regression equation is based on the formation of a linear line. So this gives you a margin of error there. Okay, based on this particular model that we've ran, it looks like the 5 personality correlates explain about 3.3% of the variance in perceived online racism. So not a whole lot. There's likely other variables that are accounting for the experience of perceived online racism. So in order to get the percentage of variance that your predictors are accounting for in the dependent variable, you simply move your decimal 2 places over, and that's how I got 3.3%. Okay. In the ANOVA table, the thing that you want to focus on is this significant number right here. And if it's 0.05 or low, you know you have a significant model. If it's 0.05 or higher, you know that you have a model that is not significant. In this case, the personality variables are explaining about 3.3% of the variance, and it is a significant model, so you can report that as such in a manuscript. Scrolling down to the coefficients, this tells you which individual predictors are accounting for the significant association and perceived online racism. Um, Unstandardized coefficients, these betas are in essence telling you the amount of variation you should expect in the dependent variable with 1 point change in the independent variable. So if this was to vary by 1 point, if extroversion was to go up one for someone, then you can expect that perceived online racism scale score would increase by 0.031. In the same vein, if somebody's agreeableness score went up one, then you should anticipate that their perceived online racism scale score will decrease by 0.097. Okay, that's how you interpret these beta coefficients. Hop over here. You want to pay particular attention to the significance column. So it looks like the agreeableness predictor is significant. We also have the conscientiousness predictor significant, and we have openness significant as well. Okay. Note how across different tables as it relates to the results, you see some terms and some statistics ultimately being recycled or reused. Okay, so mean square, it's a variance. Think of F as kind of like a standard deviation. Look, we see standardized there, standardized there. We talked a bit about T statistics earlier in the class. So really, when you think about inferential statistics, the concepts and the stats really build upon each other. You never really leave them alone once you start on the path of trying to become more efficient with statistical calculation. So at any rate, I hope that this helps in terms of showing you how to calculate the statistic as well as interpret it. There's a few things that I left out, but I wanted to keep this as basic as possible. What this potentially means for you as you go about looking at your capstone project and wrapping up your academic career within a master's in cyber psych program, this provides you another tool that you can use to complete your research project. You may have a question about a certain set of predictors and how they're related to a criterion variable. All right, this is the statistic that you could potentially use to uncover some significant predictors. All right, hope that this was helpful. Contact me if you have any additional questions. Take care.